So excited for next year's seminar. I would not want time to fly by so fast, but we are actually, I keep track of it. This is not a joke. So I have a countdown for all the major events I do and things like that. And it's 356 days to leadership and longevity. It's the countdown begins. It's kind of neat because I have so many things going on. I have a countdown, great, because I look forward to these wonderful things. But 356 days to leadership and longevity in Orlando, Florida. Excited for it. It will be our best seminar ever. It doesn't take away from the seminars in the past, but you know me. I'm always content, but I'm never satisfied, so we'll make it the best. And I will tell you, I learned this word from my daughters about a year ago. This is not a joke. It's going to be the most bougie seminar you will ever attend in your life and stuff. So it's kind of a cool word if you actually look up the definition. All right. I'm going to take a little pause for a second, because we're going to talk about something that affects millions of people. We're talking, the last stat I read was around 60 million people. We're going to talk about, as you can see here, the cognitive decline in people, what to do about it, okay? Now, cognitive decline, definitely encompasses many conditions, which we'll get into it. But I will tell you this, I can honestly tell you that I knew a person, not the person that had dementia, but I knew the wife that person had dementia, and she's they're both passed already, because she'd be in their probably late 90s now. But it was sad, because I remember having a conversation with her where she came as a patient and her husband had dementia, and it was already at a late stage and he was already in a home. And she was telling me stories, and as the time went on, that he continued to progress to the point where she walked in, and they had been married for 40 plus years, that he had no idea who she was anymore, okay? That's gonna be something that I could not imagine. So cognitive decline is a very, very serious, very emotional, a very devastating thing that if your family has ever gone through it, I'm very happy none of my family members or anything have ever suffered from this, but cognitive decline can really affect so many people in so many ways. So I'm gonna go through it, and I just wanna show some things, because I do have some experience with it that way. And I'm gonna go through some things where it takes some of these over the next couple of weeks, and like we talked about, some things we can do to support the body through the process. So the information I'm gonna give you is something that's gonna really have a positive effect, because I've seen it clinically. And we're not gonna talk about too many of the major causal factors, because I do believe there's major contributing factors that we have influence on. But I want to just talk about some way we can support the brain to actually see improvements on a lot of the cognitive problems that we see out there today. But let's start with cognitive decline itself, and let's kind of define it and see what it is here. So let's talk about the impairment. Okay, so I pulled out the NCI just because I did like their definition and what they're talking about with it. But let's talk about it. Problems with a person's ability to think, learn, remember, use judgment, and make decisions. Signs of cognitive impairment include memory loss or trouble concentrating, completing tasks, understanding, remembering, following instructions, and solving problems. Other common signs may include changes in mood or behavior, loss of motivation, and being unaware of surroundings. Cognitive impairment may be mild or severe. There are many causes of cognitive impairment, including cancer and some cancer treatments. All right, very good definition, but I also want you to talk about this. As you can see, there's sometimes medical treatments, and there's significant amount of them, can cause impairment. So I tell people, that's why when people tell me, take medication for a long period of time, I'm like, okay, I understand you may need that, but I understand there are some negative effects, and that's why we have to see this going forward. Now, one that I want to talk about today, which, for example, I think was probably the most common one that I ever saw clinically, is Parkinson's disease. It's very devastating. So we're going to take out John Hopkins' kind of view on Parkinson's disease and dementia and kind of go through a little bit and just kind of define a little bit and show you some of the factors that are really contributing to it. So let's take a look. What is it? Okay, Parkinson's is a movement disorder. It can cause the muscles to tighten and become rigid. This makes it hard to walk or do other daily activities. Many people with Parkinson's disease also have tremors. They're actually called intentional tremors. In late stages, some with Parkinson's disease may develop cognitive problems, including memory loss and dementia. Okay, the one thing that I just want you to grab from that is this. Usually when there's some cognitive decline, you'll see other neurological things that come about before memory and dementia and things start to be going away. So that's why I want you to talk about this way. That's why when I see neurological problems, and it could even be something as simple as chronic pain, I'm concerned because there is always some neurological factor. There always is. Remember, guys, do you ever think about when the body is under any form of stress, from traumatic stress or eating or toxic things or mental stress. The nervous system and immune system are probably the things that are affected the most. So then we see signs and symptoms of them early, but we don't realize that these things from a neurological standpoint can turn into other cognitive impairments down the road. We think something as simple, as a headache, we think as just even nerve pain, can down the road, because there is neurological involvement, create Parkinson's, dementia, and other things. Let's go on. Parkinson's disease is most common in people who are older than 50. The average age at which occurs is 60. Some people younger maybe also get Parkinson's. When it affects someone younger than 50, it's called early onset. You may be more likely to get early onset Parkinson's disease if someone in your family has it. The older you are, the greater your risk of developing Parkinson's disease. It's also much more common in men than it is in women. Parkinson's disease is a chronic and progressive disease. It doesn't go away and gets worse over time. Okay, there's a couple things I want to kind of pull from there. If you think about this, the reason why it happens, on older ages, I want to come back to you on this. When I started practice, type 2 diabetes was called adult onset, because what we did to kids and how we fed them, everything like that, was dramatically different. And then, guess what happens? Through the years, it got less and less, because the habits and things that led to the problems of type 2 diabetes, they just started to do with kids, started to do all these things. And, it's not a genetic process. So that's why you look at Parkinson's, okay? You look at these neurological disorders. You have to be doing neurological damaging things for a long period of times. And if you do it really young, and we're starting to do these things before, you're noticing all chronic illness become that used to be grandma and grandpa gets. Now it's just starting to go backwards. It's not a genetic factor, it's a major habitual factor. And once again, the concept is it gets worse. Of course, if you go through the medical field, and that's one thing I love about being a chiropractor, we have a different perspective. That's why the show is called A Different Perspective. When you go to a doctor and the doctor says, it only can get worse. Yes, if I'm under your care. If I'm under your care, because everything that you have in your toolbox to do anything doesn't have any chance of progressing. Because I'm going to show you this, because like I said, it doesn't go away and gets worse over time. But that's not what the research says. Because you know why? Our dominant form of healthcare doesn't do anything with it. But let's go on. Here we go. What causes Parkinson's disease? Parkinson's is caused by a decreased dopamine production in the brain. Okay? Let's say again, caused by decreased dopamine production in the brain. The absence of dopamine makes it hard for the brain to coordinate muscle movements. Low dopamine also leads to mood and cognitive problems later in the course of the disease. Experts don't know what triggers Parkinson's disease most of the time. Early onset Parkinson's is often inherited. I disagree with that. I disagree. It's a result of certain gene defects. Okay? Now, here we go. If you look at this, they know when there's decreased dopamine, guess what happens? Now they say, well, what do you know is a decrease in dopamine? How does it happen? Well, let's look at dopamine in general, and maybe we can do some things to support natural production of dopamine, because there are medications for it that they use. But here we go. Let's look at dopamine, that major neurotransmitter. Here it is, okay? I just pulled it from Cleveland Clinic. See, I pulled all these medical references, so when you have conversations with your doctor, you can give information to lead them the way I'm leading you. Here we go. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter made in your brain. It plays a role as a reward center and in many body functions, including memory, movement, motivation, mood, attention, and more. High or low dopamine levels are associated with diseases including Parkinson's disease, restless leg syndrome, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Dopamine is a type of monoamine neurotransmitter. It's made in your brain and acts as a chemical messenger. That's what hormones do. Communicate messages between nerve cells in your brain and the rest of the body. Dopamine acts like a hormone because it's just a messenger. That's what hormones are, messengers. Dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine are the main catecholamines. Once again, these hormones are made by your adrenal glands. A small hat, I don't know what they call a hat, shaped gland, look at the top of each of the kidneys. Dopamine is also a neurohormone released by the hypothalamus in your brain, okay? So as you can know, it can be produced the vast majority in the brain, but in other areas. It's absolutely fantastic. Dopamine, once again, talk about a very good reward center. Therefore, there's a connection between nerves, and the rest of your body. So that's why when there is low in the brain, they're going to have those tremors. And they're called intention tremors because as a person tries to focus or grab something, they'll start to have a tremor. It's very devastating. I've seen it literally hundreds of times when patients have walked in with it. Now, let's continue. Let's look at the role of dopamine in the body. It plays many functions. It's a neurotransmitter. Dopamine is involved in movement, memory, pleasurable reward and motivation, behavior and cognition, attention, sleep and arousal, mood, learning, lactation. As a hormone, dopamine is released in your bloodstream. It plays a small role in fight or flight syndrome. The fight or flight response refers to the body's response to perceived or real stressful situations such as needed to escape danger. Okay, so I got a question for you. Let's say you run your car at 100 miles an hour. Do you think that you're going to go through your gas tank pretty quickly? See, so sometimes dopamine deficiencies can come from just high levels of stressful things going on in your body for a long period of time. That's why I believe you're starting to see a lot of these neurological conditions, cognitive decline, earlier in life, because kids, adolescents, teenagers, young adults are so much more stressed out. They're beating up the body, just like type 2 diabetes. It used to happen when you're older, but because of all the stressors to the body, they continue to get younger and younger and younger. Okay, just like this. So these people are running out of dopamine much earlier than they were before. But let's continue. Here we go. How does dopamine make someone feel happy? Dopamine is the feel-good hormone. It gives you a sense of pleasure. It also gives you motivation to do something when you're feeling pleasure. I can honestly tell you, I've literally had patients go, oh my goodness, as my dopamine levels start to come up, I just seem like I look at the world differently. I'm more motivated. Yes. So it's not a joke. If you're sitting here going, man, I don't know why I lack so much motivation, especially people that have purpose, especially people that have a family, especially people that have something good they're working towards, they sometimes go, I just don't feel driven, motivated, I'm unhappy. I'm like going, guess what? If you could have a 2025 car sitting out in my parking lot right now, and if it had zero fuel, it's not running. There's a lot of people that are trying to run every single day on an empty fuel tank. Okay, but let's continue. Dopamine is a part of the reward system. This system is designed for an evolutionary standpoint to reward you for doing the things you need to do to survive. Eat, drink, compete to survive, and reproduce. All humans, our brains, are hardwired to seek out behaviors that release dopamine in our reward system. When you're doing something pleasurable, your brain releases a large amount of dopamine. Enjoy the pleasure. Okay, you feel good and you seek more of that feeling. That's why you guys watch the show. I bring you pleasure. Okay, let's keep going on. Okay, this is why junk food and sugars are so addictive. They trigger the release of large amounts of dopamine in your brain, which gives you the feeling that you're on top of the world and you want to repeat that experience over and over. This is very true. And that's why, for example, if you become deficient in dopamine, you have a higher chance of becoming an addict of something. Let me say it again. If you have a hard time producing dopamine, your body's going to search out and then you get that rush of something and it's like, and you want that. Now, if you have sufficient dopamine, you do have less chance of having addictions. You really do. You're going to notice this. I'm going to talk about this. And they will not teach you that, okay? I actually have some clinical experience with that when I actually worked with patients that have done these things. And it could be from some major things that people go through. Because once again, there are things that help you produce your dopamine. But let's continue. How might I feel if I have the right amount of dopamine? Happy, motivated, alert, focused, absolutely. But guess what? How might I feel if I have low dopamine? Tired, unmotivated, unhappy. You might have memory loss, mood swings, sleep problems, concentration problems, low sex drive. You know, I've looked at men in general, and they're going, their testosterone is low, and their dopamine is low, and they have a beautiful wife, and they just have no sex drive, and everybody's like, oh my goodness, how is that possible? Well, you got to remember, there are some neurotransmitters, there are some hormones that can go low, and these are things that do happen. See, so do I believe that every person that's unmotivated tires of that? No, sometimes you just have a lazy people culture. But I've also seen it where I've actually started to work with people, and other docs started to work with people, and they saw more motivation, and they're like, I just feel more vibrant again. Well, your body's just running on a full tank of premium gas now, and that's the thing that's very important. So let's continue. Here we go. What are dopamine reuptake inhibitors? Because of course they're going to try to medicate you. Their inhibitors are drugs that prevent dopamine from re-entering and being reabsorbed by the nerve cells that release, so it leaves it more in circulation. This makes more dopamine available for more neurons in the brain. Dopamine reuptake inhibitors are used to treat depression and narcolepsy and to overcome addictions to smoking, overeating, and binging. Oh, did I tell you that? Did you see that now? They've admitted that when you have and get sufficient dopamine, you can sometimes overcome your addictions from smoking, overeating, binging, all these things. There's major addictions to all things. So you're gonna find out that if you can help restore some of that dopamine, guess what happens? You're gonna find out that you actually have a little bit more control over yourself. It's like, I just can't stop eating. I see all the time. Well, of course, there's a reward center and you get that, and all of a sudden when you're not producing it regularly, it just drops and you look for the things that bring you that pleasure. But let's go back. As you can see, they're a bit like Wellbutrin, Provigil, and you can see all the other ones that way. The ones that see stop smoking, look at how they talk about this way. They actually even try to classify them based on the response of dopamine. Now, here's the thing, but they also have medication they talk about, it was levodopa. Levodopa is used to treat Parkinson's disease. Okay, now we're talking about Parkinson's in general. We went from having low dopamine is a major contributor to it that way. Now, levodopa is a medication used to treat Parkinson's. A loss of dopamine is responsible for the movement syndromes seen in people with Parkinson's disease. To help levodopa reach your brain, as opposed to other parts of your body, levodopa is combined with another medication, carbidopa. Okay, once it reaches the brain, it converts to dopamine. All right. So what they do is this. There's people that have a significant amount of tremors and muscle wounds that exist with Parkinson's. And so what they do, they give them L-Dopa, levodopa. It's a medication that they produce trying to mimic and convert into dopamine. All right? Now, let's go on. How can I improve my dopamine levels in a natural way? Okay? Once again, this was on Cleveland Clinic. You may wish to try remedies that naturally increase dopamine. Further research is needed on the effects of food in neurotransmitters. Eat a diet high in magnesium and tyrosine-rich foods. These are the building blocks for dopamine production, which I agree with. I do believe you should have magnesium. I do agree you should have tyrosine. Tyrosine is an amino acid. It's absorbed into your body and then goes to your brain, converted to dopamine. Foods known to increase dopamine, chicken, almonds, apples. You can read the rest of them, that's fine. Engage in activities that make you feel happy and more relaxed. This is thought to increase dopamine levels. Actually, and this is the big one. Some examples include exercise. Guys, you need to move. Look at all the things on there. You need to move. You need to move. But what I'm going to do is this today, because there is so much amazing research on this, randomized clinical trials, human trials, and I don't know why this is just not massive public knowledge, because here's what happens. There's a very good website out there that only posts research-based things when it comes to herbs or actually nutritional things that way, and it's called Examine. And it's very hard on there with their researchers to get an A+A response on there, to get an A response. And so what I did is when I went to it, because I actually pay for the research, the Examine database on Mucuna. Now let me explain when I'm going to get to it. So remember the word Mucuna. Parkinson's disease, it gets in grade A. And the evidence, I got 3 human studies, as you can see right here, high potential. You can look at daily intake of Mucuna, how it affects it. The Mucuna purines in Parkinson's disease, Mucuna in Parkinson's disease, a double-blind clinical and pharmacological study. Now, what is Mucuna? Why am I so obsessed with it? Okay, here is why. I will take this every day. Mucuna, commonly known as the velvet bean, it's actually a cool-looking plant, is a legume. That is, so that's why people say, don't eat legumes. They got all the bad stuff. I'm like going, here's a legume I'm eating, man. It's not a joke. I kind of laugh about it a little bit. See, that's why people try to classify, all these food. If you listen to some of these integrative and functional medicine, and even some of the chiropractors that talk about, avoid this because it has this thing, and it's like going, okay, I understand, but does the body process through it that way? Because you could actually take meat. Vegans do it meat. Carnivores do it vegetables. You know what I'm saying? And I'm talking more in the natural world, okay? But this is true things when I look at this legume, but let's go on. It is that the widespread tropical regions in Asia, Africa, South America, it has a wide range of nutritional uses in Ayurvedic medicine, including an aphrodisiac, okay? As a treatment for nervous disorders, as an antidote against snake venom. The plant produces seed-containing pods covered in fine hairs that can cause severe itching upon skin contact. Because the seed of mucunas are rich in, there it is. What are they rich in, guys? L-Dopa. It's the highest thing in L-Dopa that they've ever found in the world. A precursor to the neurotransmitter dopamine. The plant has gained attention on the potential treatments of the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Limited research has explored the potential aphrodisiac, anti-venom, antidiabetic properties of mucuna. Yes, Mucuna seed, okay, which is absolutely incredible, is the highest source of L-Dopa. So as they're trying to mimic L-Dopa from a medication standpoint that way, it already exists. It already exists. And so therefore, I can honestly tell you, I have had, once again, now, just supporting dopamine production, I've seen major changes in some of the cognitive things. Mucuna is something I take every day. Now, I will cover this one day. I believe if you take Bacopa, Mucuna, and cod liver oil, I actually just popped this up this morning because I actually love this movie. You ever see but I think I'd love it. It's a good movie. It's not a great movie, but it's called Limitless with Bradley Cooper, where all of a sudden he takes this medication and the world just opens up to him and it's different. I think if you take Mucuna, you can see why with all the dopamine, and then also Bacopa and cod liver oil, to me, that's the limitless pill right there. What it does to you cognitively, I am 50 years old and I'm sharp as a tack and I'm a genius. I mean that sincerely, I mean that humbly. I train and study every single day. My brain just never slows down. So when all of a sudden it feels like, when he takes it and it seems like it's all fuzzy, and then all of a sudden he takes the limitless pill and it's like everything is open up, that's what I feel like every day. I really do, not a joke. And that's why when we look at the human trials, what they did with Mucuna, there has been a decrease in Parkinson's symptoms. Now why? Because there's been dopamine sufficiency restored. And here's what happens. And then you notice, you talked about addictions, you talk about things that go on neurologically. Cognitive decline is going to happen to people if you are dopamine deficient. So as you can see pop back up, get some Mucuna seed. Get some good source Mucuna seed. It'll have a significant amount of L-Dopa, and that's going to be one of the major precursors to help you restore and support the brain for its own production. I'll say Dana, we can do something that's like, oh, the road stuff. Oh, here we go. All right, Aaron, you go.
All right, good morning, Doc.
Morning.
There is so much going on this week, and it was hard to narrow it down, but that we did. And one of the things that so many of us have been so excited about is to see what's going to happen when this Maha Commission comes out and is able to jump in and actually get started, right? Like, we've all been warming up for this. Now it's kind of go time. I know we don't like the word root cause and that concept around here, but we're going to dig into this a little bit and see. I think they actually proved TWW's stance on this. So that's great. Let's check out that first slide and that first headline. All right, the Maha Commission unveils landmark report exposing root causes of childhood chronic disease and crisis. This just came out 2 days ago.
Yeah,
so,
it did.
Like, right? It hit the waves all over the place. All right, so are you ready, Doc?
Yep.
I know we've been hearing about this. I'm sure you've heard about it on your socials, on your media, emails, everywhere. So let's look at some of the stats on that next slide there. We have got, today in the US, more than 1 in 5 children over 6 years old are obese. Like that's just mind-boggling. This is more than 270% increase compared to the 1970s. Prevalence of prediabetes in teens is more than 1 in 4 teens, which you had talked about that just a moment ago, having more than doubled in the last 2 decades. Childhood cancer incidence has risen over nearly 40% since 1975, especially in children aged 0 to 19. Autism spectrum disorder impacts 1 in 31 children by age 8. And this one, ooh, you know I want to hit on this one hard. Teenage depression rates nearly doubled from 2009 to 19, and with more than 1 in 4 teenage girls in 2022 reporting a major depressive episode in the last year. Like that one, I want to go on, but I know that we should probably do that while we're not on all the social media platforms. So we'll leave that one alone and cover these next few. 3 million high school students seriously considered suicide in 2023. That's devastating. Between 1997 and 2018, childhood food allergy prevalence rose 88%. That's one of the hallmarks of things that we check out here at the Wellness Way right away because it's made such a huge impact. So, is there something you want to jump in here, or shall we keep going?
Just got one thing to say.
Yeah.
You know, when people say, my doctor said, I'm sitting there going, okay, results. You know, I always watch these, this guy named Lane. He's always like trying to tear on different people and natural people and the randomized clinical trials. What's okay? If you guys are so right all the time, why is everybody so sick? I mean, sincerely, if I led everybody to poverty, to bad lives and stuff. This, my company wouldn't get bigger. No. You saying it's like the idea is that they force you. It's all once again it's getting people to do stuff by their insurance. It's all a country club that's trying to dictate people. So when people say my doctor said, I'm like, your doctor is actually leading you down the path that shows you to be so sick. And I will say this just directly: more vaccines, more allergies.
Makes sense to me. Think about it. What if healthcare was a football team, and with stats like this, who's getting fired?
Yeah, those are the Cleveland Browns of the healthcare.
We went there.
I don't care about football, but the idea is that's a good one. It used to be the Packers. Packers were actually they send you here to punishment and stuff like that. So before the Favre area.
Yeah. All right. Well, this next slide, Maha report calls for whole of government action to solve childhood health crisis.
Won't happen.
So this, you're right, it won't. But right, who is this that's publishing this? The American Journal of Managed Care. Well, right there's a couple of words that are a little bit of a red flag to me. Managed care. A peer-reviewed journal focused on disseminating clinical information so that they can tell other people, especially healthcare professionals, what to think, right? What to read in on this.
Yep.
So let's take a look at that next slide there. We've already touched on that obesity and diabetes and autism and mental health. And that last sentence in the first paragraph, additionally, allergies and autoimmune conditions, including eczema, food allergies, and celiac disease have sharply increased. And we see that all the time here in our offices. Do you want to weigh in here, or shall we keep going? All right. Let's see, the next paragraph here, chapter. With more than 40% of U.S. children having at least one chronic health condition. This is bonkers. We used to talk about how that was 1 in 40% or 40% of the people in the country. Now that's 1 in 60%, and this is simply kids being 40%, right?
Yep.
All right, so let's see. This is where we can tackle this idea, this next one here. We can tackle this idea of root cause, and really I think that they're hitting on the wellness way philosophy here. And anyone of our chiropractic loving watchers, you might recognize the 3 T's. So what they're hitting on here is in that first paragraph. First, the American diet has shifted dramatically toward ultra-processed foods, right? So second, children are exposed to more than 40,000 chemicals through food, water, and air. Third, children's increasingly sedentary and screen-focused lifestyles, averaging 9 hours daily of non-school screen time. I think this is leading us to a hidden idea here.
Yep.
Let's think about it. 8 to 3, they're sitting at a desk.
Yep.
Then you have 9 hours of non-school screen time. That's 16 hours in a day.
Yep.
When are these kids outside moving, or when are they sleeping enough?
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. Call me crazy, but I think we're hitting on something here. So then that number 4th one, I think that there's a word here that we might be able to use that doesn't get us kicked off of platforms. The over-medicalization of children has led to a surge in prescriptions for stimulants, antidepressants, antipsychotics, and antibiotics, often without adequate justification. There are some other over-medicalized things that we would probably also love to hit on. So that's a big thing. So how would you like to weigh in on this one?
Very tiptoeish, not because I'm worried about saying things. No, I'm hopeful what the administration is doing that way. It's just all you have to do if you're involved in politics. Watch the pushback they get and the stupidity of the people pushing back against it that way. Because it's like if you were to try to divert funds away from medical care, which most of it is just we've seen this before. Guys, if Congress, and the Senate approve money for some health care, what it really is just going to private pockets and more pharmaceutical drug companies that way. And I want you to think about this. This is not capitalism. This is actually fraud. The government gives a drug company to produce a drug and gives them like $30 million. They use that money to produce a drug, and then the private company keeps all the profits. That's your tax dollars. Do you see? And they should have no right to that whatsoever that way. And then all of a sudden people go, okay, you have trillions of dollars. You can do your own research that way. Oh, and you have the Democrats yelling, they're pulling money away from cancer research. No, they're not. You know what I'm saying? It's not getting, and no matter what happens, you think, if you spend $4.3 trillion a year in healthcare and your kids getting worse, don't you think if you were going to give funds to somebody, don't you think they should go in a different direction? Remember, I'll tell you this. Start with a pediatrician, your kid will be sick. To have a general practitioner, your kid's gonna be sick. You know, they're gonna guide you down the wrong path because what you want to accomplish, you can never do with that system, period. Yeah. So as I said, because remember, I mean it sincerely, when they talk about all the things that they're doing, they're still getting medical guidance, even from natural things. You know, how many, I mean it sincerely, I guarantee if we even ask our new Surgeon General, I like her, she knows nothing about the velvet bean. She knows nothing about Mucuna. She knows nothing about this. So unless you have the right people in place, so I'm just always going to be on the outside, worried about the public, not worrying about politics, even though I'm heavily involved with that stuff and everything. Just because I'll always be there, you know, speaking to congressmen, speaking to the people involved that way. But you know, it's this. I tell people, clinical results are really what made the wellness way what it is today. It has nothing to do with politics, has nothing to do with money, has nothing to do with research, has nothing to do with, even though we do have our research, but that being said, is the direction they're going. You think you're going to legislate health? Here, you know, you have a person that just loves Mountain Dew, okay? What legislation are you going to do to stop them from doing it? Do you understand? Now, what you can do, which is smart, stop paying for the crap if they're living on government assistance and stuff like that. But you got to remember, but who's going to fight that? Mountain Dew's going to fight that because they want that money from the government because it keeps their business going. So, yeah, I got a lot to say on that. So, all right.
All right. Here's the other big story of the week, all right? Let's take a look at this. NBC News. Biden's last screening for prostate cancer was in 2014. Okay. I'm about to get a little spicy on this one because I've got to ask the question, how old is Biden? He's 82.
Yeah.
I respect for them, right? Like, I understand this is a very tenuous situation and he's ill. But let's consider something here. Who is also the most closely monitored person on the planet for healthcare concerns? The President of the United States. I'm gonna call a little something's off here, right? Because either someone's lying or someone didn't do their job, and either way, our elected public servants aren't doing their job. All right, let's go down to that next slide. Slide that talks about when his last PSA test was in 2014. So prior to Friday, President Biden has never been diagnosed with prostate cancer. So I feel like there might be a little play on words within that last sentence, but he hasn't had a PSA test done since 2014. I don't know, Doc. I feel like this is a very commonly run marker.
It is, like, especially at that age. And
right?
Stuff,
so how is it possible? Like, and if we're saying he wasn't diagnosed with cancer, right? If we go on to further into that article, an oncologist who did not treat Biden but served on his transition COVID advisory board said on Monday that the cancer had most likely been growing there and spreading for years. Okay, we definitely would anticipate that he had prostate cancer for many, many years. So again, if this is one of the most covered people on the planet for healthcare concerns, wouldn't we have seen this, right? Still, there are exceptions, and some doctors have said that in rare cases, patients can develop a high-risk form of cancer that spreads quickly and aggressively, which sounds a little bit like turbo cancer to me, but I know that we're also not supposed to discuss that one out loud. So I'd love to hear your takes on how this may have been, since he hasn't had a test on this since 2014. But also, is this rare? Like, how do we look at this from a healthcare standpoint?
I don't give a shit. You know, all this is taking distraction away from people's lives.
Yeah.
Who gives a crap? I mean, sincerely, who gives a crap? Because here, let me say it's really simple. I love how when Republicans are in control, the Democrats are always losing their crap. And when Democrats are in control, the Republicans are always losing their crap. And so that, do you understand? I mean sincerely for all my listeners right now, you're going to lie 4 or 5 times a day. You're going to lie 4 to 5 times, if not more a day. Why? Your husband or wife's going to say something, you just don't want to deal with them, so you make up a white lie. Oh, it's just a little white lie. It's that. Everybody fucking lies. It's like, I sit there and laugh and go, now, I like just tell it. The reason why, and the people that, I'll tell you this, people that are very, very, very direct, and they sound like assholes, they're not lying to you. That's why they sound like assholes. Mm-hmm. Do you follow me in that? Mm-hmm. That's why I sound like an asshole most of the time. And it's like, because I will tell you the truth, okay? That being said, who cares if I went 2014? Who cares if I was there? they're all going to lie to make sure they get their agenda pushed across. If you just come from a standpoint that the vast majority of things you're going to hear from them are lies anyways, you're going to hear lies from Trump's campaign, you're going to hear lies from you're going to hear lies from HHS, you're going to hear lies. I just don't care. You know what something is this? When I do care about is, for example, is how people are getting through the day and how their families are and what they can do, and them getting good information that way. And you can, so that's what I said. I don't. No one really cares about what the mainstream media says because they're massively biased. I'm massively biased, but at least I tell you I'm biased. People are like, oh, it's just so sad that Biden got cancer. He's going to die soon. Nope. I'm actually happy he dies soon. I'm extremely happy he dies soon. He has been nothing but. He's been a public servant. He has millions and millions of dollars, and he got paid $180,000, made president when he's $250,000 that way. Corruption. Let him die and go. I'd say this. I'll make the equation. Jeffrey Epstein and actually Biden. Was anybody really sad about Jeffrey Epstein dying and killing himself? Probably not. Okay? It's the same bad criminal, bad person. Yes, Biden, I'll relate to him just like Jeffrey Epstein. He's a bad, corrupt person. Who cares he's got cancer? Who cares? And all the you self-virtuous Republicans act like you shouldn't celebrate it. Right. A bad person needs to go away. He's created bad kids. He's created bad family. Guess what happens? Go away. So nature, take him. I don't give a shit about his 2014 stuff.
Well, thanks for speaking the truth
Yeah.
about the headlines and helping us look at these things in a little bit different light, right? Like all of this is loud, and like you said, it's distraction.
I have to do this because Pierce Morgan, the humanity in person. Was he humane when he was doing all the corruption? Why is it when a person gets sick, you just forget about everything that they did bad and stuff like that, currently doing bad?
Yeah.
It's like, stop it. And nobody cares if he dies. Sorry, no one cares.
Yeah. And the convenient revelation of this diagnosis right before books and things coming out that are going to expose a whole lot more about that cognitive decline much earlier in office, right? Like, oh, now we can't say a word about it because, right? Yeah, all that virtue signaling.
Yep. He's got a horrible history. He's got a horrible family. Guess what happens? Who cares? He's got cancer. Who cares? I hope the cancer takes him over really quickly.
Well,
that's the truth. So when all you get self-righteous people are like, oh, so sad, and you're behind the closed doors, you're going, ha, 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 ha. I've heard it before. I'm like, just tell it out loud. Tell what you really think. What are they going to do? Cancel you or not a gym membership?
That's great. Not a gym membership. All right. Well, thanks for looking at this with us this week.
You're welcome.
All right.
Dopamine is doing just fine. My reward center of saying what I really believe and stuff like that. It's really funny. I wish people would do that more often. I watched, I like Pierce Morgan, I really do. I think he's great. I think he's done some great things. So do we agree on everything? No, we're not going to agree on everything that way. But it's like when he was like the whole Biden thing, the humanity that way, and his service for 50 years. He did not serve for 50 years. He if you look at his history, you would never say that. And you can say that about a lot of politicians and stuff like that. So long story short is we'll continue on our last 10%, but we're going to turn it over to Dana now and give us some great updates we have there.